One of the things we've not seen recently, well, we might have done a little teaser, was the wheels on this. So this is probably the first opportunity we've had to show them actually on the car. We also got, on the subject of chrome finishes, a lot of parts back from the chromers last week. Lots of parts for this. So we've got the air ride bezel, as like a little display for the air ride and controller for the air ride. Did a little machined brass bezel for that, which we've had chromed. We had the quarter light knobs machined. Again, they were a design of ours. We made them brass and then had chromed to replace the kind of the original ones are like a weird plastic looking thing which just looks out of place with all the chrome on the doors. We did a cordless phone charger, so in the centre console, which is a completely scratch-made piece on this, we've done a little sort of insert that you can put your phone in to charge it wirelessly. And again, that we machined in solid brass and had it chromed, just so the whole kind of thing ties together with that chrome finish, which kind of ties in with all the original exterior mouldings. So that's that, mainly chrome. We also got the parts for the seats, so Dean's able to now rebuild the seats for that. Cortina, if you follow me this way. One of the things we've been working on a lot is the Cortina. So this came through last week just as a painted shell. We're just about ready to drop the engine in now. We've basically got the engine and gearbox ready. I think Nat mentioned that in the last episode. We were waiting on a machined part, which is basically the oil filter housing, which actually takes off the oil from the block and has the filter mounted to it. And it's extremely close on this to where we wanted to have one of the engine mounts. So we basically designed a billet piece that is not only half of one of the engine mounts, but it's also the oil filter mount. That's just come back from being machined today. And so we're just going to paint that, get it on the engine, and then we'll be able to drop the engine and box in. The axle's already ready to go. I think Nat showed that last time with the disc conversion on it. So in the meantime, we've just been doing as much as we can in terms of the rest of the fit up on the shell. So things like getting the battery in there, running the battery cabling which runs down the sill, and with all of these things we made provision when it was at the bare metal stage. We basically planned out all of the provision for this wiring, things like the main wiring loom, the battery cabling, fuel plumbing, brake plumbing. We planned all that out and drilled holes and put studs or holes for threaded inserts in everywhere, so that at this stage it's relatively straightforward. The fuel tank's gone in. That's an injection tank that Retro Ford do. There was no point making our own. Theirs was a nice job. It's got a little swill pot on the underside to avoid fuel surge. And then there's a tray underneath which mounts the fuel pump and filter. We welded bosses to the shell for that when we were at the bare metal stage. You'll see around here there's loads of cable ties and a yellow bit of wire which you'll see everywhere. Now that's because just today we've had a chap from Bramax, which is a company that recently we've been entrusting with all of our wiring loom builds. It's not often we ship jobs out to other people, to be honest, but when we finally become satisfied that there's somebody who will do a good job, we do occasionally, and we've had a really good relationship so far with Bramax. So they've been out today to basically measure up and draw up the wiring loom for the car. But because we'd already planned the routing for the wiring loom, I've basically laid in some yellow wires just because they stand out and they're easy to see, so they could see the exact routing that we'd proposed, and then they could measure up along that routing. Elsewhere on the car, we've been doing the brake line provision, so we've started getting all of the stainless fittings in for the brake lines. For those, we use Teflon lined stainless braided hoses throughout, which are swaged and crimped onto their stainless fittings. We've got the heater unit in there, you can see, and even that wasn't straightforward on this. There's flapper valves, manual flapper valves for the air direction change, one each side, and the offside one actually collides with the new bias pedal box. So we've had to remote mount that separately, which is just one of the various complications we've had, similar to the thing Nat was talking about last week, which was the throttle pedal, the lack of there being a throttle pedal of any sort of usable standard. So yeah, we've been doing the heater installation, pedal box installation. We've made a mounting plate for the PDU. So on this car, all the electrics are going to be controlled by a power distribution unit. So that's in place of a fuse and relay box basically, and gives you programmable control of all the car's electrics. So we've made a mounting for that because we needed to get that in there before they measured up for the loom. I've got the headlining in, hence the myriad of bulldog clips around it. So that was just an off-the-shelf bought headlining with the Lotus type star material. it's a long and tedious process fitting those. I mean, I tend to be the one that does that, and if you do one for the first time, you'll think it's never going to be right, but you just have to be very patient, getting it, stretching it out, clipping it, stretching it, clipping it, and just keeping revising it and getting it closer and closer to being wrinkle-free. And then that's basically done now. All along these flanges, it's stuck to the metalwork of the shell, so I've just cut the clips on there to make sure it's stuck properly. So that's probably about it on this. We move through this way. As we go through here, you'll have to excuse the noise a bit, and the paint booth's in use, which is quite noisy. Now I'm hoping with my mic I've got up here, you'll still be able to hear me reasonably clearly, but as is the way with these uncut videos, work has to carry on. So right, metalwork. That's the screen wash tank for the Cortina. That's going to mount down on the sort of A-pillar, if you like, under the outer wing behind the wheel with a shield in front of it. And so you're going to fill it in the engine bay, and then there's a fill tube down to this larger tank underneath, so there won't be a big tank in the engine bay, just for neatness' sake, basically. Morris, quite a lot of progress on that. We've just been doing these rear chassis sections and this crossbar under here, which basically mounts the rear of the bodywork to the chassis. And if we come around the front, that's where most of the work's been going on, is on the front of this. So all of the sort of tube frame at the front there, the inner wing structure, and we've finished that bulkhead piece. So that's all looking quite smart now. Talking of that bulkhead, Nat mentioned in the last video, you might have noticed he seemed to hesitate a bit when he was talking about the M stamp and was saying, well, we're not sure about that yet. But the reason we're not sure about it, this was the press tool we made for the first one. We realised afterwards it looks remarkably either like an old Morrison's logo or possibly a Magnum ice cream logo, although it is a copy of the M off the steering wheel of a Morris Minor. But we decided there was a nicer M logo on the bonnet emblem on the Morris. So we made this press tool, which is the final one. Literally just draw it on CAD, plasma these pieces out, and then glue them onto a thick backing, and then you can use that as a press tool then to make pieces like this. And we've obviously now pressed that logo into the bulkhead on the Morris. Now, metalwork. If you don't like scary looking sights when it comes to metalwork, this probably won't be the one. It's probably the time to look away. So we've obviously had this Mustang kind of in the background in a lot of previous videos, but we're starting work on it in earnest now, and it's basically going exactly how we expected it would. It was not only very rusty, but it had a pretty serious accident in its time. We could see the rear rails were bent on it, all of the boot floor had been kind of either bashed straight or replaced, that quarter panel had another one welded over it. It looked like it had been a real mess. So we were fully expecting to have to cut everything out. So basically Stu spent the first portion of the time jigging it all on our select jig bed. And then he started at the front because that was the bit that was reasonably intact. We've done the front inner wings, we've replaced the upper and lower scuttle panels, obviously got the bonnet in there and the doors for alignment's sake. And then we've moved on to the back, which is more or less a case of just cutting it all out, getting the new chassis legs mounted on the jig according to the original dimensional drawings, and then basically building everything around that. It's interesting with the back off, you can really see the extent of the accident damage, because even the inner parts, like this back of this inner C-pillar here is kinked, the arch tubs here and here, these kinks here are all from where the whole back's been kinked at some stage. So, you know, it was a seriously damaged shell. The good bit is you can buy most of the panels. There's a few we're having to make, so this inner C-pillar section, which is the same on this side as well, totally rotten. It's a real bad rot trap. So we're going to have to make some new bits for that because we can't buy that bit. And then I think the plan is then we're going to, when we've got the roof skin off to replace the roof, and this structure here repaired, we'll probably blast and zinc spray all of that before the roof goes on to protect it. So that's that one, scary stuff. Probably last thing to mention is the Mk II Jag. So I think this was in here last time and Nat touched on it. Probably didn't go into detail. We'd obviously blasted it and zinc sprayed the underside at that stage, and then it's got this anti-corrosive zinc epoxy primer on the outside of it. Since then, Gaz has now made a start on it. Now he's finished the Cortina paintwork, so he's been doing all the seam sealing on the underside, which is more or less the first job. and just tidying up any little bits and where, you know, there might be little creases in the pressings and that sort of thing from original, or bits that we've repaired that aren't absolutely perfect looking, so you might do a little skim here and there just to make those perfect. And yeah, he's just going to carry on now, seam sealing, and just push through all of the initial prep work on it. So it'll be exciting to see this develop. It's basically lots of sanding, sand. That's it. So we'll try and update you again next week with what's going on, and I'll see you next time.